What's going on, folks? Wes Pruitt, Four Star Sports Media, and of course, you're sitting down at the Tigers Den, where it's all Memphis Tigers all the time. Got John Sturdivant, fellow bald guy, in there with me as well, and we've got a very special guest, and it's a guy that if you followed us on social media, I'm very vocal about being a massive fan of him. But that is Mr. Nick New. Nick, welcome into the show, man.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm really stoked to be here. I've done this just kind of introduce myself to the audience who may not know me. Currently at sports editor, the Daily Helmsman. Um, I for the write about Memphis men's basketball and the American Conference as a whole for midmajorbasketball.com. I've only done this for about 2 years, but those 2 years have been really jam packed with a lot of coverage, and yeah. But I'm super happy to be here and start talking some Tiger sports.
All right, well, let's go ahead and start with probably the hottest topic, other than Alex Simmons no longer being the head coach. The hottest topic right now is Memphis basketball men's tough loss last night to Tulane. No longer playing basketball. The season is over. 13 wins total on the year. Nick was on the post-game press conference just like we were last night. We pressed Penny a little bit on scoring droughts, which has just been a trend of this team all season, and then the potential of a GM hire. So, Nick, I want to start. I'm a big picture guy. John's going to ask you what you eat for breakfast. I'm not going to ask that. When you look at University of Memphis men's basketball, the question last night about GM, where do you see this going? I mean, Penny kind of skirted around it, but then at the very end, he said the same thing he said all year, which is, "Oh, we were trying to get Dane and PJ, and it didn't work."
Mhm.
Well, you only won 13 games. Why are you still talking about that?
Right.
Anyway,
Um, I th For me, I think the part about Dane and the part about PJ, I think that's a valid, I don't want to say criticism, but like a valid part of why this team wasn't able to do what it was, what maybe Penny thought it was going to do. But by your point, we are in March. I think that's something that should have been addressed at the beginning of the season and then moved on from, right? Because I do think this town, and Penny mentioned it in the press conference, that this team did have a good enough roster to compete in the American, just didn't happen. And then to your point about the GM position, I've been I haven't been as vocal on this specific topic, but I do think it would greatly benefit Memphis to hire a GM. Now, who that may be, I don't know. Um, I think if Penny potentially going into that role that'd be an interesting move. So that way you don't cut ties with them completely. He could still be involved in Memphis significantly. He could still be kind of a front facing personality of the team, of the brand. Potentially help out with recruiting, help out with the portal, that type of stuff. But realistically, I don't know if that specific scenario will happen. That's something I've been thinking about with regards to a GM. But do I think that'll happen? Like I said, probably not. I think Penny will get back get back into the head coaching role for year 9, and I think he's owed that raise. To be honest, I mean, in his all of his 8 years at Memphis have been 20 plus win seasons, and he's coming off from 5 seed in the NCAA tournament and a conference championship. And all of a sudden, right, you miss on some targets, and you don't bring back your best 2 players from that championship run. It makes sense why the team's not as great. So I do think Penny is owed some grace in terms of getting a year 9.
off of that question, sorry, John, off of that question, um, when you look at the GM role, who is somebody or what are some characteristics or intangibles that you would like to see this person in this role have?
That is a good question. I haven't really looked at names all that much. I'm going to be honest. But in terms of characteristics, I think it's somebody. Obviously, if you're taking a job at Memphis, you got to love the city, right? You have to really love Memphis. You have to love basketball. You have to love this team and this brand for what it is. But not to mention, or not, excuse me, to add on to that, I think something that you have to keep in mind is being able to assess talent. Obviously, in the era of NIL, revenue sharing, and the portal, right? The financial ramifications of talent. So essentially, getting bang for your buck, right? Getting the best talent available for the team lowest price point. Just to save, strictly financially speaking. Um, I think, yeah, being able to assess talent and getting bang for your buck, I think those are the two biggest traits that you'd be looking for in a GM. And not to mention, it'd be nice to let them kind of be front facing a little bit as well, being able to speak to people and be a more of a representative of Memphis as a brand.
John, that's what I'm really intrigued to see with this potential hire. Now we heard that there's supposed to be a GM hired. In my opinion, this should have already been done, but I mean, hey, I get it. John, that's what I'm looking forward to, man. Who is it gonna be? It's if you're a WWE person, who's the masked man? Well, now we know. We got to figure out who the GM is going to be for the Memphis Tigers. But John, go ahead.
Well, Nick, my first question for you is: we saw some scheduling news this week regarding an Iowa State opponent, first game on the
Hmm.
schedule next year. We've seen Texas on the schedule, but man, I know it's good to have some great teams on your schedule, right?
Right.
But this year, your non-conference teams went a combined 230 and 189. I know you cannot control how they do and whatnot,
Right.
but me personally, I think he kind of a little bit does overdo it at times. I'm saying to play all these cupcakes like he brought up, in his press conference. Like I'm not going to be playing these cupcakes just to get 20 wins. I'm just
Yeah.
saying,
That.
man. But God, man, all these games this year, especially the Wake Forest game, stood out to me.
Hmm.
Where that game could have gone either way. Of course, at the end, we already know what happened at the end. But man, some of these teams did not help Memphis' cause either. Even if they did have a good run in March and maybe make the NCAA tournament, their seed probably would not have been as good anyway, just because of their quad 1 to 4 losses too.
Yeah.
So let's just be
And
real on that, man. What's your thoughts on that?
on the schedule. So I mean, I've always been a proponent of how many schedules. I think it's good for Memphis if they get the wins. I think it's good for the fans because it's just great basketball. And I think it's just good for. I think it's just good, right? He's very. I don't want to put too much John Calipari references or things on that to him, but that's very John Calipari esque in the way he scheduled the non-con. And right in addition, you've got I think it was Dayton on the schedule as well,
Mm-hmm.
with the American Conference A10 scheduling alliance. Which, by the way, side note, I think there should be an American Conference A10 challenge. I think that'd be great for both leagues. But that aside, like you said, you've got Iowa State, you've got Texas. I'm pretty sure Ole Miss has a return trip. Um, it's once again looking like a very loaded non-con for Memphis, and again, that's nothing new for this team. But I think if you're going to schedule like we saw this season and last season, if you're going to schedule those games, you need to win some of them to get at large considerations in the tournament. This season, they didn't. Season before, they did. So if you go out in the off season and take care of business and acquire the talent they want, scheduling like this isn't a problem because you'll be winning those games, or at the least very competitive in those games against teams who are more than likely going to be at large selections in the NCAA tournament. So I've always been a big fan of how Payne schedules this non-con, and I'm looking forward to covering another great suite of non-conference games.
Great question, John. Incredible question. All right, let's jump over Wait, hold on. John, do you have anything else on men's basketball before we get over to talk about women's? John's on mute, but it's okay.
All right, Nick. Sorry about that. Was your biggest disappointment the 3-point percentage of 31% on the field, or was it only two players averaging double figures with Curtis Givens not so far behind being the third?
Yes. But I do think that Penny Penny's teams have historically. It's interesting, right? Because I do think that in this era of of just the game of basketball that we're in, Penny's teams haven't been like they've been good from three, but they haven't been like elite from three. So the 31% it is not good. Don't get me wrong, but it's not necessarily like jaw droppingly. It's sort of expected for a Penny Hardaway team, right? He loves to run his offenses very fast, very efficient, paint dominant systems, right? If someone gets hot and gets you know if someone gets hot and starts shooting them for three, cool. Let's ride the hot hand, right? But overall, I do think Penny does love to run inside out offenses. So the 31% from three on the season doesn't really surprise me. What does surprise me is the double digit scores. Penny Hardaway not being able to find guys who can get buckets. That surprises me because you've had at least one elite bucket getter, sometimes two, on these teams, right? You go back to PJ Haggerty, go back to David Jones, go back to who else? Like James Wiseman while he was here. All of these other guys who have been able to just go out there and get you 20. That didn't happen. That's not the type of team that Penny built. I think he opted for more depth than top end with, like I said, with PJ and Dane, with their situations being what they are. I think he opted for more of a everyone eats mentality, which when your top end guys go, that's not a bad idea. Just didn't work. So, yeah.
It's a valid point, man. Really, really good point. All right, let's jump over to women's basketball. We saw a leadership change. Not shocking. But boy, I tell you, Alex Simmons. I mean, damn, coach, you went out in just a blaze of glory on the way out. Nick, first off, let me get your thoughts, big picture eyes of her tenure, and then, man, I got to get your thoughts on the comments, just brazen comments as she departed as the Memphis women's basketball coach.
Yeah, I've covered this team all season for the Daily Helmsman, so I'm very familiar with with this team. I've been around. I've been to all the home games. I've covered all their away games too. So the the thing with Alex Simmons' tenure, it just and those comments she made, which I'll get to in a minute. If she was winning, like if she, all right, there's I'm sorry, there's a lot to get into here. So I guess we'll start with this past season. Olio. Um, just the fact that you weren't able to get. I'm sorry. I've got a million different directions going with this team. There's a lot to get into here. Um, so I guess let's start with. Um, yeah, I guess I'll start with the comments, right? Because that's what's fresh in my mind. Um, you just can't say that. That's it's extremely tone deaf. It's extremely. I I just don't know why, right? In a town that's so passionate about its basketball, in a town that's so passionate about its own, why? What on earth compelled you to say that? What on earth? Like, what do you gain from going out like that? What do you gain from going out and bashing a city who has given you everything? Right? I wrote a column in the Helmsman, describing this, and a lot of the comments in on that post on X was that this team was underfunded. No, they're not. In terms of revenue sharing and NIL, dividends, it's football, men's basketball, women's basketball. They're third. They're third on campus. That's behind the women's soccer team that's been killing it for a quarter century. That's behind the men's tennis team, who's also doing really good things right now. That's behind a pair of growing programs of baseball and softball, which we'll get into in a minute. There's, and I also asked Alex Simmons directly if there was an NIL shortage, and she said no at that same press conference. So there's not a funding issue here. There was a culture issue. There was a coaching issue. There was an issue with Alex Simmons, and the way she responded to the question I asked about her future, it's just I just don't think she cared. I really don't. I just because if you really wanted to come back for a fourth season, you wouldn't say that. You just wouldn't. And like I said, it was just extremely tone deaf. It was I was kind of stunned when she said it in the moment. I'm gonna be honest. And yeah, I've got a lot of thoughts about about Alex Simmons and this team, and yeah, and the way she handled things on the way out and during her time as head coach. She didn't really recruit from the Memphis area that well. She didn't get that many signees. In year one, all of those signees from Memphis were from Katrina Merriweather's team. I think, if I recall correctly, the only Memphis player, like according to their, if you go to the roster page, look at their places of birth, the only one from the Memphis area, Deja Richmond. She was the only one in her whole 3 years that she recruited. You can't do that in a city that has such deep talent at the prep level. And instead, she focused on getting recruits from her husband's AAU team. What the hell? You can't do that. Well, I guess you can, but it, why? Why are you doing that? It just didn't make sense. And yeah, it it was a cluster, to say the least. That tenure was, and I wouldn't be as mad. I wouldn't be as passionate about
It
this.
was absolutely porous from day one.
Absolutely. And the reason I'm kind of kind of going in here is because in the first 2 years of the season, she didn't have media coverage when she lost. When she lost home games, no media coverage, no post game availability at all. That changed this season, thankfully. But the fact that it was a problem to begin with, the fact that you won't speak to local media following a loss, bewildered me. Bewildered me then, bewilders me now, bewilders me in hindsight. What, why? That confuses the hell out of me. And yeah, that's it's just another reason why I do not think Alex Simmons was going to work here long term. And I am super excited to see where this program goes in the future because prior to Alex Simmons' hiring, they were on an upward trajectory, and that like she took the bones of that year one WNIT team that, in my opinion, if Merriweather stayed, I think they could have made the NCAA tournament that season. I really do. And just went sub 500 and was a first round exit in the conference tournament. What are we doing? And not to mention, she added top end talent to that team in the form of Elijah Smith. How? How is that happening? And it's so interesting because she established the fact that she can get talent in the form of Elijah Smith, in the form of Deja Richmond, in the form of Tilly Bowler on that year two team. I loved watching her play. And the form of Dee Hageman on that same team. She established the fact that she can get talent. She established the fact that she can coach from her time at Gardner Webb. She took them, I think it was like 29-4. That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. And she took them to the NCAA tournament. She can coach. She can get in talent. She just didn't for whatever reason. At Memphis, she just didn't. I can't tell you why. But sorry for getting on my soapbox and ranting a little bit. But man, her tenure here was just so incredibly frustrating from a lot of different perspectives, and I'm excited to see where this program will go in the future.
Well, stay on the soapbox because I got one more follow up question for you. Um, so actually, it's a little two parter, and I know that's a faux pas in media, whatever. Um, I have to know Paris Gaines. I just I didn't really understand the decision from the very beginning, just from me. But man, boy, speaking of no pun intended, but going out guns blazing. I mean, what are we doing? And then it was like, oh yeah, she's gone. But I mean, there's an article, she's arrested, but I, I just don't feel like it's like no one cared. Um, and then
And
I guess my last off of that, I guess my last is it there seemed to be almost a character issue within the program. What's your thoughts on that?
and I do agree with the cultural issues surrounding the program. Um, I've heard bumblings that there were issues at practices, that there were issues at that there was just a lot of tension between players and coaches. Now I don't know that for certain. I'm not going to speculate. That's not my place to speculate. These are just things I've heard from a person who heard from a person who heard from a person. So potentially, you know, take that point with a grain of salt. But I think that is I think that point is kind of backed up a little bit by the fact that Paris Gaines that situation happened. And to your point, nobody really cared because because the team wasn't really visible, right? When Sincere Parker got arrested at the beginning of the men's basketball season, it was the biggest story in town for months. And when the case finally dismissed, everyone was just like, "Oh, thank God." But now, when Paris Gaines gets arrested for something significant, for something much more serious, with a lot more evidence, with three witnesses at the scene, with video camera, being present, I would presume, when there's a lot more concrete things to say, hey, this actually happened and something serious is going to happen, nobody cared because the team wasn't. I guess because the team wasn't as visible, excuse me, than the men's team. And yeah, but it really is a shame that that happened to Paris. And yeah, but I do agree that there were certainly cultural inconsistencies, especially this year.
Man, I don't know if I can tap it that one off. But the last two parts are wow. Nick, you kind of nailed it on my question regarding recruiting because I cover high school sports on the side, man. For example, on the
Hmm.
weekends or whenever I get a chance, I like to cover girls basketball and boys basketball for 4 Star Sports.
Hmm.
But I never really saw no Memphis staff in the buildings when I went to games. And like you said, they got to build relationships, man. Like
Absolutely.
I have talked to like 3 or 4 coaches outside of West Tennessee, and they have never seen her or spoke to her on the phone or gotten an email from her or nothing,
Which
which is
that
mind blowing.
bewilders, yeah, that bewilders me. I like how in a city that's so well connected through at all levels. How 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 I don't I cannot comprehend how that is an oversight
Bro,
somewhere
even in
from
this,
somebody.
even in the state of Tennessee, she could be out. Like was able. Let's just say she still had her job right now.
Mm.
She could be very well in Murfreesboro recruiting other teams across the state by getting some of these girls to go to Memphis as well. Let's be real on that, man. Like they got the talent all across the state. I know people want to go to like UT Martin, Middle Tennessee, and all that, but come on now, you just cannot lose girls to those programs year in year out. And that's just to me, that was just a barn burner of relationships, like you brought up. But do you? I mean, I think you gotta have some local ties, whether it's gonna be a head coach or an assistant coach on that new staff. I texted you, man. I think Jasmine James, who is an assistant coach right now at Tulsa, right now done pretty well at Tulsa too, and I might add. A
Hmm.
former Georgia Bulldog, she played under Coach Landers for crying out loud, right? She also played in the WNBA. Why
Hmm.
not bring her home and let her be on staff at Memphis, and so she can recruit the state of Tennessee like nobody else could? I know she'll get in her car and drive 4 to 5 hours away to go watch some girls. So I just want to say, like, who do you think would be a good fit as not only a head coach but some assistant coaches down the road?
Um, I do think the point about Julia Davis. I agree. I think she'd be a great fit on the as assistant head coach, if not as head coach. Right? She's doing a good job at Tulsa. Why not take a flyer on her? But if you want, like, my personal favorite pick right now, Nina Davis over at MTSU. That's a name I've been that's been connected to the Memphis search for per basically everyone who's covering it. And in my summation, that's probably the easiest hire you can get, right? Especially after the comment Simmons made about Memphis. Why not hire somebody from who's currently coaching at a school in the area, right? Obviously MTSU is not in the Memphis area, but one of I think it's the closest campus to Memphis. That's not like that's D1. I could be wrong, but um, but yeah, I mean, and of course, she's from the area. She knows the area very well, and I feel like I think that's the way you build this program back up. Is you just go all in on local talent, right? Don't ignore the portal entirely. Don't you can't do that these days. You just can't. But if you build a really solid base of local talent that the city can connect to, and everything else, it's going to work. Because like if you're worried about the fans, there are people showing up, and you still had really good crowds through like the last few games of Alex Simmons when there was nothing to play for. People will show up to watch Memphis women's basketball if they're winning games, if they're good, and even if they're not good, if they got something to root for, people will show up, and you give them something to root for by giving them those local connections. And that's where I'm at with it. If you want my just 1A, if you could hire them as Nia Davis over at MTSC.
Appreciate that, Nick.
All right, so Nick New joining us right here on Tigers Den, right here on the 4 Star Sports Media Network. Wes Pruitt, John Starkman in here with you as well. Nick, it's time to jump over to two programs that you described earlier as growing. I would agree. But I want to start with a program that's near and dear to us here at 4 Star Sports Media. We had quite the deep dive into the Stephanie Prothro era. You call it whatever. It's not wasn't an era, but whatever. And then now with Trina Prater, there is belief. That is a word that just comes to mind for me. There is belief. There has been a complete culture change. We've sat down with Coach Prater a few times for some exclusive conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Let me start with softball. It's if you look at the record right now, that people are gonna be like, Wes, you're a freaking idiot. But if you've followed this program, if you've watched these programs, if you've listened to these girls speak, there's a real belief. And if you watch them play, you should believe. This team has not a lot of quit in them. They just they're just making some small little errors that's really hurting them. What's your thoughts on Trina Prater and Tigers softball?
Yeah. Again, this is another team I've had a lot of experience with. I cover them for the Daily Helmsman too. So I'm really glad you brought up both the teams. I'm, my 1A and 1B, so to speak, in the spring. But yeah, talking about Trina Prater and that softball program right now, man, they are building something. Like you mentioned, if you look at the record, not, maybe not the best, but you've got to put that into context, right? Before Trina Prater got, was able to do what she did in year one. I believe the last time that, and I'm going to do some impromptu Googling, the last time that this softball team won more than 10 games, not 500, not 250, 10 games in a single season, you would have to go back to 2022 was the last time this team won 10 or more games. And, excluding last season, right? Last season they won 19 games. I believe that was the most since 2019. Won a game in the conference tournament. That's the first time they did that since 2018. And in this season, they are currently with a record of 7-16. Again, you look at that record and think, what the hell? This team's not any good. But then you take a look at their games. 3-4 loss. They lost 3-4 on the road at Arizona State. That's a game they should have won. They lost 2 games due to cancellation. Actually, 3 games to cancellation off of Indiana State, Kansas City, and Southern Indiana through the tournaments that they hosted this past season, or this season, I should say. Excuse me. So those are 3. I would count those as wins, especially Kansas City, because they put up a 12-run inning, and it got rained out before the NCAA rule could deem that as you won, a complete game. But they were certainly on track to do that. Had a rough weekend in Baton Rouge, right? But again, you're playing some really good teams there. Of course, LSU, and yeah, like if you look at this team, they've played quality opponents in the non-conference. Like you've got Oklahoma coming up in about a weekish. You've got Ole Miss coming to Memphis. You have, like, before that game was canceled, I believe North Alabama is the best team in their conference right now. So the softball team, they're not ducking anybody. I think that's the biggest takeaway from year 2 is in the schedule is that she's not ducking anybody. She's playing the best teams because that's how you get better, especially in a team or in a league like like the American, which people bash the American for football, for basketball, but in softball, this is a 2-bid league. This is a 3-bid league for sure. And one of those teams is USF, who they just played. Of course, the doubleheader on Friday, those games were what they were, excuse me. But on Saturday, that's the game I want to take away, because against the best team in the league, well, second best, one of the best teams in the league, you were in that game, you had a chance to win it. And like you mentioned, Wes, the reason why this team isn't doing what they're doing is because of errors. They lead the country in errors right now. And if you cut those in half, this is a 500 team, I think. And you've got so many winnable series, one of which being this weekend in UTSA. You've got to, yeah. So I mean, like I said, this program is building, but you've really got to go in and watch. And I really like what Trina Blair is doing. I think she's got the culture down packed. The energy I got from a couple of sit down interviews I had with her was she is breathing life of some fresh air into a program that didn't really have it when she inherited it. I'm really impressed with what she's doing, and I'm very much looking forward to telling their story throughout the rest of the season.
And that's really what, I mean, no pun intended, but that's what has me all in on Trina Prater, is that not only is she putting a new breath of life in, it's the same breath that she breathes every time she breathes. It's really it's who she is. It's who she is as a person. It's who she is as a wife. It's who she is as a mother, and it's who she is as a softball coach. And you listen to the players, you watch the players. Neely Taylor, that is one of the best damn softball stories in the nation that no one knows about. No one. That is one of the best stories in the country.
And
And Trina Prater loves every bit of it.
I'd say sorry to interrupt, but I'd say she's second to Paris Brianesi. That is my personal favorite story on this team right now. She's coming over from Sweden, which, first of all, how often do you hear that in college softball? Is an international product. Then she went to D2. She was a D2 call-up, I guess, right? She went from D2, now plays D1. And all of a sudden, she's leading the team with stolen bases, I believe, and she's got one of the highest batting averages on the team. That's such an impressive story, and that doesn't happen without buy-in to the program, to the coach, to everyone else. And even in the losses, Coach Prater, she takes accountability, right? She's not going to sit here and make excuses. She tells it how it is, and she says we just got to be better, right? Especially on the defensive errors, which have been the biggest issue with this team. The bats haven't been an issue for the most part. It's been the defensive lapses and the inconsistencies there. So if, to her point, and I think that's really been the story of this team all season, they clean those up. Who knows what this team can go? But and that's what I like about her the most is that she takes accountability for the stuff. It's not like she doesn't do coach speak a lot. She really just tells you how she sees it, and that's a great thing to have in a coach.
To be honest with you, she is my favorite conversation with any coach on campus because you are having a real conversation with her. There's real passion behind her words, there's real meaning behind her words. But to your point about Paris, that is one hell of a softball story, man. When
Absolutely.
the news came across that Memphis was getting a player from Sweden, I literally like sat up in my chair and I was like, I don't know if this is accurate. And I literally, you can ask, I literally replied
Mhm.
back to Stephen, the SID. Incredible guy, by the way.
Mhm.
I love giving credit to the SIDs because those folks work their ass off. Um, I literally emailed back and I was like, is she really from Sweden? He put LOL, yes, Wes. And I was like, I was blown away, Nick. I was blown away. But to your point, man, she has come in and she is tearing it up. Um, John, what you got on softball?
Man, Nick, like you brought up, man, the schedule itself, 7-16 this year. I think if we can just win 15 to 18 games this year is a success in my book. Um, I just want to say this, man. She does a great job. Not only her, but her whole staff as a whole has done a great job so far. What I love about this staff, I was on to say, I know, I'm sure you follow them on social media too, like we do, but they're going to these camps, man. They're going to like
Mhm.
other camps and looking at players. They're going to they're announcing it on social media. That's the key in this day and age in recruiting for not only softball but for all sports in general. And I also want to say this: she's also hosting these mega camps, which in previous years we never even seen a softball coach actually do that as well. So for them to showcase like young teenage girls for just going to mega camps and other colleges going there too. They're still in the football idea, of course, I think. But still, man,
Mhm.
like you don't see that this day and age in college softball. And I think that's
And
just help this program going forward, not only recruiting, but to get some wins on that schedule.
yeah, and I was you took the words right out of my mouth pretty much. Is that that's what you do to innovate, right? Yeah, before you just kind of you innovated by just going after a player that maybe not everybody sees, right? Instead of going after the 5-star, you go after a couple 3 stars, right? That's not how you innovate these days in the portal era of college athletics. You have to go to the players and then have the players have the ability to come to you, build those relationships. And I think that's what's going to work um, with Coach Prater long term. That she's building these relationships and she's finding success with them, right? And of course, like I said, you look at the record, you're thinking, what the hell, right? And I implore you, if you're watching, catch some games. Please catch some games. This team fights like hell. They're very fun to watch, especially on the offensive end. I think Ariel Davis and Maya Clark are two of my favorite offensive threats because it takes is one pitch and they're sending that thing oppo. They have serious home run power, and I those are two of my favorite players to watch. Just I don't know how I got on this topic, but I did. But yeah, I'm really liking what softball's doing, and that's another sport that I'm really interested in seeing
And I
kind of
think you
grow.
nailed it regarding the conference, man, as a whole, too. Man, like, the fans need to go out and support the American as a whole in softball because I feel like this is like I told Wes and I told other people this, man. This league in the future very well could still bids from other teams by playing the best like what they're doing right now. A North Texas team can still bid. A South Florida team can still bid. A Florida Atlantic team can still bid. The list goes on and on. But this American conference as a whole, for people want to bash the American, but not for softball. Because I feel like the American Conference in softball is one of the top ones out there right now, other than the five that are pretty big right now.
Yeah, especially amongst mid-major conferences, I do think that the American ranks very highly in terms of like the conference hierarchy. I guess it's been the American's been a multi-bid league since 2018, right? So that's including the time with Houston and Cincinnati and UCF and SMU, all of those teams in the league, right? That you're going back to there. So you're kind of going across eras of the conference, and it's still been good in softball, right? And I really do think that the American conference, like you said, if you could bash them in football, you could bash them in men's basketball, you could do all that all you want, and your criticisms are valid, but you cannot say the same about softball, and you cannot say the same about baseball either. I do think the American Conference is a very good conference in baseball as well, and it has been historically, but that's for the past few seasons at least.
I mean, it's like you're looking at my notes, Nick. When you look at Tiger baseball,
We both are, Nick. We both are.
we uh, we saw success under Carrick Jackson. Then we saw Carrick
Mhm.
Jackson go back home to Missouri. Hey, I get it, man. You have a chance to go back home and coach in the SEC. I don't care if you suck every year or not. You're still in the damn SEC. It don't matter. Um, but you bring in Matt Riser. I like Matt Riser. I just I know it's early in his tenure. I get that, but there's just some tendencies with this team that I just don't understand. I just don't understand some of these tendencies. I I like the passion from Riser. I like the accountability from Riser. Um, I I like Matt Riser.
Hmm.
I just I don't know if it's player development. I don't know if it's culture. I don't know if it's mindset. I don't know if it's just what it is, but there's something about this baseball team that when they get things get tight and get behind, I just don't know that they're gonna be able to come back. Unlike over on the softball complex, where I don't feel that way.
Yeah, and I agree with the point about Matt Riser, right? He's also not a coach that'll he's also he's another one of these coaches that'll tell you how it is. And I agree with the point that when things get tough, you don't know how Memphis is going to respond. But in most cases, they're not going to respond very well. And I think that's the biggest criticism of Matt Riser's tenure. Um, is just that the tight wins or the win do need the 50, I call them 50-50 games, right? Close game down the stretch. Who's going to win it, right? He's just not winning those. And I don't, and like I said, I don't know if that's a product of culture. I don't know if that's a product of players. I don't know if that's a product of stamina. I don't know if that's a product of it's a myriad of different things. But at the end of the day, it's just tough. It's just really tough because people were talking about online that Riser next up on the chopping block, right? It was like Simmons then Riser, right? Those were the two first ones to go, and not yet. I'm not there yet on Riser. Um, if you want to, I mean, if you want to fire him at the end of the season, do that, but not in the middle of a campaign, especially when you haven't even reached conference play yet. Um, and you mentioned that Riser hasn't really been here. To me, 3 years is I think that's when you can start assessing a coach's overall performance. right? Year one, they're kind of getting their foot in the door. They're kind of working with some of the bones that the previous coach um, had in place. Year two, you finally get your system, your recruiting, it is your program, your schedule, everything. So again, that can be a transition year. But year three, that is the year that you've got your systems in place, you've got your talent evaluation system in place, you've got probably some sort of financial backing, right, is starting to come into effect. That's the year that year three of all coaches' tenures are pivotal. And so far, all signs are saying that Matt Reiser's year three isn't going to be good. Still plenty of time to turn things around, of course, don't get me wrong, but right now it's not looking great.
Yeah, that's the concerning part is that year three is trending in the wrong direction, and there doesn't look to be any uh whole lot of room for success moving forward. John, what you got on baseball, man?
Like, my biggest disappointment this year is the ERA in pitching, where they get through the first 3 innings and then they just fall apart the 4 through 7 innings. I'm sure that's probably a concern to you as well. But there's no reason for this team to be year in, year out of losing teams they're not supposed to lose to. Um, what do you think is the deal on that? Do you think they're just not taking midweek games seriously? Because I feel like this day and age, you got to take them seriously. Because look at what's happening in the SEC right now regarding
Whew.
some powerhouses. What do you think is the problem
Yeah.
on these midweek games, man? Like, there's no, to me, as last Sunday, your ERA is at 202. You're
Yeah,
losing
I didn't
games you're
know.
not supposed to bad teams. And then you got Eastern Illinois coming in this weekend, whose ERA is in 136 range to 150 range, depending on what week it is for them. You gotta take two. You gotta win. I think you gotta win all 3 games this weekend because you got a tough road trip in conference play next weekend down New Orleans. These environments, I mean, also these players that are coming in from other programs. I'm not saying they're not producing right now because I think through 16 games at 250 300 batting average is okay. But I just want to see more consistency out of them. Like, I want to see like a 2 for 4 at bat or 2 for 4, not 1 for 4 or anything like that. I know 2 for 4 is better than 1 for 4, but I don't see no consistency in this lineup right now regarding from top to bottom where nobody's really produced. Like he brought up last year, the younger players are better than the older players. If that was the case, why are these younger players not on the field? You know? So I just want your perspective on these midweek games that we're losing that we're not supposed to lose to. And I feel like that's what could very well hurt Matt Reiser. And like we brought up with other sports already, man, I feel like you need another local tie on your staff as well regarding baseball.
Yeah, because baseball is another sport that Memphis has a really strong prep scene in. So I think the more local connections you have in Memphis, I think that's true across all sports, for all campuses, right? The more local recruits you can, I think that's just, overall a better, thing. I think that's a truism of college athletics, that even in the age of the portal, local recruits still bring value. Um, but to your point about the midweeks, I do think that there are some lapses, right? I do think that the one midweek game that really went strong for Memphis was a 24-5 drubbing of Little Rock on February 24th. That is really the only time that I saw Memphis baseball really just lock in full 9 innings. Well, I don't even think that game was a full nine. I think it got mercy ruled if I remember correctly. Could be wrong. Um, yeah, no, that was a 7 inning game. So not even a full nine. But point is, that was one of the only times I've seen this team really lock in. Okay, we have to win a midweek, and that I just don't understand why it is. And I mean, to your point, John, about the arms, that's been the team's problem for all of Matt Reiser's time. The bats have been solid to great. I think this team's bats are once again not the greatest, right? But they're serviceable. It's really just the arms on the mound that that are this team's Achilles heel, and I don't know, man. I it's been a problem for all 3 years of Riser's tenure, and I just don't know how you fix it aside from just wipe the pitching staff clean at this point, and just go get local guys and do what happens.
Well, speaking of seeing what happens, let's talk Tiger football. I know not in season. Well, it is in season, I guess. Um,
We're getting there,
really, there is no off season in college football anymore, or really any
right?
sport. But Nick, when you look at Tiger football, a new era is in. Charles Huff. You can huff all you want. He's the coach. Um, but when you look at Coach Huff, hey, that was the title of my article when they hired him. When you look at Coach Huff, you see success. You see, and this is based on what I believe. Okay, you see success. You see a passion very similar to Trina Prater. You see a system that has been proven to be successful on and off the field. You see a coach that has incredible pedigree and has coached with and under some of the best. Some would even say the GOAT. But then you see a coach that I like to phrase it understands the moment. His opening press conference, man,
Oh my God,
sit
I was
back
ready
and
to run
take
through.
notes.
Yeah, I
That
was ready to run
is
through multiple
that
brick
was
walls.
oh oh I mean the whole tiger and ambush and oh my god. I mean like there was real this is not a shot at any coach or previous coach. There was real interest put into the program, the city, the damn mascot. Um, he understood the assignment, and he seems to be continuing to understand the assignment even at a higher level now. But then you look at new higher level Liberty Bowl, Simmons Bank, Liberty Stadium. The renovations look freaking amazing. Um, I'm just intrigued is not even the right word, but it's just the word that continues to come to mind for me about this upcoming season. What are your thoughts on first Charles Huff, and then what are your thoughts on a 2026 season that, based on what I believe, has a lot of promise and has a lot of I don't want to use the word hype, but has a lot of excitement around it.
Yeah, I for sure feel the sense of optimism around Tigers football heading into year one of the Charles Huff era, and I was a big proponent of his when at Southern Miss and at Marshall, his at his previous stops in the Sun Belt, and I think Dr. Ed Scott, I think he nailed this hire, and he hadn't even played a snap of of football. Right, he hasn't coached a snap of Tiger football, and I say that because look at the portal, win after win after win after win, almost across the board. It seems like everybody really believes in Coach Huff. From his introductory press conferences, and every time you talk to him, he just feels so passionate. He feels so energized. You feel he's one of the best motivators probably out there in the country right now. And you mentioned he played for the GOAT. I don't think it's an argument anymore. Nick Saban, um, amongst college football coaches, um, and I think that his time at Alabama, him getting all of that praise from that coaching staff. I think he was a part of Dan Lanning's staff, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong, just going off the top of the head here, but yeah, there's definitely a lot of optimism for football, and not only just because of what Coach Up has done in the portal and in player recruiting, but the schedule. This is a really tough schedule. Memphis goes into week 0 for the first time in school history against UNLV, a really good team. You play Boise State on the road. No power conference games, unfortunately. Um, I really would have loved to see that the Ryan Silverfield's revenge game at Arkansas. I think that would have been a great environment. But be that as it may, um,
It will never
I
happen.
never. I disagree. I think it'll happen eventually. I think it's got to happen eventually. But especially as long as Silverfield's there. But yeah, I'm personally more excited for Tiger football than I've ever been. I grew up in a football household, right? We were talking right before we went live here. Mom's a Tennessee fan, dad's an Alabama fan. Everybody I knew was scattered amongst, scattered amongst the SEC. But the one thing everyone could agree on was that we all love the Tigers. Whenever Memphis football was on, and we were just like, we'll turn on the Tiger game and root for the Tigers, right? That's in a football family. It doesn't in a football family in Memphis rooting for the Tigers. This is what you did, right? And I think a lot of other people probably feel the same about Tiger basketball, but for me, it was always Tiger football. So seeing the amount of optimism amongst fans, amongst media, amongst just everybody, is proof enough that I think Charles Huff is the right guy to lead Memphis into the future. And I do think that if Memphis, knock on wood, gets invited to a Power Four conference or an upgraded G5 conference, I think he's the guy to lead you into that transition and past that transition without losing a step, um, without losing a step there. So I'm personally really pumped for the Charles Huff era, and I cannot wait to watch some games and really lock in on this team.
Just real quickly, the reason I say it'll never happen is number one, Arkansas still owes the Memphis Tigers for a game in the series back from the 90s, where Arkansas dropped Memphis, and then they picked up Louisiana Monroe. And then, you want to go back and look at some of those games. The Citadel comes to mind. But the other reason I
Mhm.
say it won't happen is once the 9 game schedule came for Arkansas, you can go back and listen to our tapes from freaking 4 years ago, John. I literally said on this show, the Arkansas series is going to be gone. They may play a game in Fayetteville, but that'll be it. I don't see this series going past one more game, and that one game to me has a humongous cloud over it, just strictly because of the 9 game schedule in the SEC and because of the power play of, oh, by the way, you got to go schedule another power conference for your out of conference game. It just puts Memphis in a big time pickle, not just with Arkansas, but with any power conference across the country, which, to your point, beautiful point, by the way, that's why if you're Charles Huff, that's why you go get UNLV. That's why you go get teams like Boise State. Now by the way, don't forget, Memphis has a schedule set up with Southern Miss. Don't forget about that.
True, that is true.
So that would be very interesting, and that is a series that I would like to see back on the schedule, as well as a team like a Louisville. Go get a Cincinnati. If you can get these teams that you have history with, there's real tangible thoughts and fans. It invokes emotion and it invokes fans to go out because right now I can tell you this as someone who's been following this football team for 33 years. My stepfather has not missed a home Memphis game since 1985.
Wow,
Memphis is about to price him out. Memphis is about to completely price him out of football. He's now dropped down to 2 season tickets and one slot in like the blue lot. It's not even where he's been parking for 30 years. It's it's getting ready to price fans like him out. So that's why I say go get a Southern Miss, keep UNLV, keep Boise State, go play, you know, find teams. Appalachian State. God, I would love to play App State. Go
that'd be a
find
fun
teams
series.
across these other conferences, MTSU for example. Sorry, I'm getting a little long winded here. Apologize, but
No, you're good.
this is how you make Memphis a national name without playing the national necessary opponent. And I think Charles Huff once again understands the assignment.
And yeah, that you brought up some really interesting series there. Like I do think an App State series would be fun. The MTSU series would be fun. I'm pretty sure Arkansas State's on the schedule this season. Getting the Paint Bucket Bowl, I think it's referred to. Kind of back up and going. I think that's great. But I mean, yeah, that I think that's absolutely how you do it. And that's a great point about the 9 game SEC slate. I completely forgot about that. That's my bad. But yeah, and once you do that, right? Once you establish yourself as the best of the rest, right? The best G5 school amongst all G5 schools. Once you start winning the American Conference more consistently, and making those CFP appearances, if you become a mainstay in there, there's no way in hell that if you offered $250 million to the Big 12, they're going to turn it down again if you make college football playoffs. That's just not going to happen. They're going to at least consider it. Or if you make some similar offer to the ACC or any of the other power leagues. So if because I think Ed Scott said on a Grind City Media spot months ago that football is the thing that pays the bills, and um, I think that's just a truism of college sports nowadays. But to your point, I absolutely agree that for Memphis to get back to that national uh, powerhouse, I guess they would need to start uh, scheduling games against these big G5 brands and beating them.
Tell you, I'm not one to shy away from ruffling a feather, especially with truth. When you look at what Ed Scott has been able to do, the day Ed Scott was hired, I told John Memphis will be in the ACC. Actually, if you go look at Ed Scott's contract, I think you know this, Nick. There's a
Mhm.
clause in there that he gets paid more money if Memphis enters a Power Five conference. Well, what are the odds that Ed Scott was at Virginia? He understands the ACC. He understands the landscape. He understands how to be successful. I just piece things together. It's really not that damn hard. But John, I know John's excited about Tiger football. What you got on Tiger football, John?
Man, I wish it was here tomorrow, to be honest with you. But yeah, Nick, you made a great point. Wes, you made a great point too regarding scheduling, man. Who would not love a Sun Belt Fun Belt game on a Tuesday night on ESPN, or even the MAC action on Tuesday night? You know, that type of stuff on the schedule too. Um, Nick, I'm glad it's not really a football question, but give me some staff members that you have seen maybe just that excite you right off the bat so far regarding this staff.
I'm going to be 100% transparent. I'm not the most in tune with Tiger football. Of course, I know football. I can talk football, but I'm not in tune as to the staff members there. I'm just going to be fully transparent because I don't want to. I don't want to misrepresent myself or anything. But yeah, I'm not the biggest. I'm not combing through that program with a fine tooth right now.
All right, then I'll ask you a
Um,
better question regarding Memphis Athletics as a whole. Then,
okay. Okay.
what can Memphis Athletics just do better to get people in the seats? You know, regarding basketball, and I'm not saying. I mean, let's be real, man. The attendance over the last 2 years have been awful. Let's just say that. I know people are saying same thing with football, although you're not playing the bigger opponents, you know, whatnot.
Mhm.
There's no reason for you not to have 28 to 30,000 plus at every home game, especially for the start of the year that you had last year. For example, I know Friday night games hurt you in attendance because that's high school football night, you know, whatnot.
Mhm.
But what can Memphis Athletics do better to get people in the seats? I know could be like lower the ticket prices a little bit. I know the Memphis got a great deal right now regarding football, but what can Memphis do better to get people in the seats, especially in basketball, other than winning, of course?
Yeah, I think you just uh, hit the nail on the head. I think winning cures all, in terms of really every sport. But in terms of football, I do think that lowering ticket prices is something that they need to look at. But I do think also that the stadium renovations are going to naturally drive people, to come check it out, right? So I do think there will be a boost in attendance for football, just based off of new head coach, new stadium, etc. Right? But for basketball, I have said this for a while. I really, really want an on-campus basketball facility, right? Of course, we have El Marone for the women's basketball team. I think that venue's perfect for them. That because when that venue gets packed, it is electric. Um, if there was like a 6,000, 7,000 seat arena for men's basketball, and you can still have the relationship with the FedEx Forum, right? You can still have your biggest home games there, right? If Like for example, if you play the Louisville series in FedEx Forum, right? Play those bigger non-conference games and conference games at the Forum. You'll keep that relationship there. That's fine. But the biggest reason when I talk to fans, when I talk to people about, hey, why are you not going to, what's happening with attendance? It's price at the gate, the commute to the facilities. It's the I don't want to go downtown. It's the tip off time. Sometimes it's just a tip off time thing, right? There's a variety of things, but the one that I'm seeing the most is just the ease of act. It's a really difficult sport to just get out and watch, right? Oh, just take the life of an average, of an average student on campus, right? There's not much of an incentive, and it's not very easy for them to go, oh, hey, I've got nothing going on. Yeah, sure, I'll go check out a basketball game tonight. Get in. Students, yeah, student can get in for free, sure, but they gotta drive downtown, they gotta park, they gotta work through the maze known as FedEx Forum. It's just a lot. There's a lot of hoops to go through for your average college student to go to a game. That's not okay. That I do think that a on-campus facility should be. I think that's the easiest, and I think that is the most direct route to solving the attendance issues for men's basketball. Do I think it'll happen? Probably not. Right? I think the way Memphis men's basketball in its current state realistically drives attendance figures up, win. You just win. And you keep scheduling how you schedule. And I think that's another reason, like we mentioned earlier, that Penny schedules the way he does, gets butts and seats. Because it gets butts and seats, it gets the Forum electric, and gets the city buzzing about men's basketball. So yeah, I just build an on-campus facility if you want to go that route. But if you don't want to go that route, just gotta win, especially in the case of men's basketball.
I tell you what, the people I've talked to, I tell you some people that I've been talking to. I'm not going to say their names, but I tell you why they're not going downtown as much anymore. You brought up the parking. The city of Memphis Commerce is a complete. I'll say it right now, is a complete joke regarding the parking prices. Unless you pay in advance, you're probably looking at $20 in advance. And the day of the game these days, in these garages that people feel more safe going in parking their car at, are about $30 to $35 a game.
That's ridiculous.
And then on top of that, I want to say this, man. I know that Memphis Athletic Ticket Office, and Scholarship Fund, when they ask for football and basketball together. This day and age, a lot of people are doing that across the country. But for the older generation that people are in their season ticket holders for like 40 plus years, like Wes brought up, they can't afford both of them together that much anymore. Think about it, man. The donations is getting ridiculous too, I feel like. I also want to say this, man. Nobody wants to go to a conference game and pay $75 for a decent seat. For a family of four, you're pretty much, even with two kids and two adults, you're gonna be spending at least $300 in one day there by food, parking, and tickets alone. So I think that's
Yeah,
one reason I think the city of Memphis Commerce is gonna have to do something going forward as well.
yeah, that's a completely valid point. The and I again, if you that's another thing you can do if you want to keep Memphis basketball at the FedEx Forum, just lower the price of tickets, people will probably naturally go, oh, well, cheaper to go, why not? So that's a great point there. Yeah.
I think we need to start a petition, John. I am a huge proponent of Nick's thesis idea for a much smaller sized on campus venue for the Tiger basketball team to play in. Very similar to what Tulsa does. They play in their local, and then they also go play in the what's it called, the Box Center, BOK Center.
Right. Yeah.
Where the Thunder play?
And that, yeah,
Mm.
exactly. Well, no, that's Oklahoma City. I'm talking about Tulsa.
Oh, oh,
Um,
my bad.
yeah,
Yeah.
um,
North Texas time.
close, but yeah. But when you look at, I mean, that's and you always hear it about football, which makes no sense. But basketball does make sense. Basketball makes a hell of a lot of sense. But then you also keep men's basketball and women's basketball right there on campus, not South Campus, campus. That's big. That's big because most people don't know this. Memphis is a major commuter school. So if you already have a kid on campus taking a course and it's a Wednesday night and they get out of their class at 5:30 and there's basketball game that tips off and they can walk their tail over there, get in free anyway. They're already on campus. They're going to walk by their car, drop their backpack off, walk over to the game, enjoy the hell out of it, get in their car and drive home, just like they would have normally done on a Wednesday night anyway. If you don't believe me, ask Nick New.
I am currently a student. Yeah. I do know a lot of people who commute myself. I personally don't. I enjoy staying at the dorms. I love just being able to wake up at when I gotta go to class, just take a shower, do what I do, and go to class and walk. But to your point, I I think that's another reason why a basketball facility on campus would be beneficial. And even if it is on South Campus, right? It's a less than 5 minute drive from main campus to South Campus. You've already got all the facilities on South Campus. Um, you've got you've got baseball, you've got softball, you got soccer. Um, but yeah, so even if it is on South Campus, I think obviously having it on the main central campus would be ideal. But if you can't find space, putting it on South Campus wouldn't hurt because a 5 minute drive right down the road is not as taxing on gas, on time, on anything else than a 20-minute commute downtown, where it'll be much more expensive to park, to get in, to eat, to watch the game, and to go home. So yeah.
That's where you go back to my stepdad's idea, and it's probably been enacted by now. But if you create a shuttle system from main campus to South Campus, whatever game, it runs every hour. On the hour, if there's a game, it runs 3 hours or 2 hours after the game or whatever. That way, if you want to tailgate or hang out or whatever, do your media stuff, whatever, you can do that. 2 hours after 2 hours, you got to get a ride or call somebody. But the shuttle will take you back to campus. It'll drop you off. Same thing for football games. Take a shuttle. Boom. Is there a bus? Boom. Shuttle every hour. Da 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 da. Hey, if you're too intoxicated, we take you back to campus. We drop you off. We don't take you back to the game. You know what I mean? Like find ways to keep it safe. Find ways to keep students not only there but there to interact in the event. Yes, I understand partying's fun, da da da. But at the end of the day, you want people to remember the experience, which is to John's point earlier. That's what Memphis football has become, a game day experience. It's not about the whole season anymore. It's about that game, that day, that team. Who are they playing? All that's what Memphis. That's what college football is. It's a game day experience. But speaking of experience, Nick New, man, what a hell of an experience tonight, man. You killed this. Before we let you go, man, we gotta let you shout yourself out. Let everybody know how they can follow you. Let everyone know any work that you may have coming up, and then just close out. Just let everybody know a little bit more about who you are.
All right. Well, like I said, thank you so much for having me. It was a blast talking to you all about Tiger sports. You can follow me. My main platform of engagement is X over there, new Nick 901. That's really where you'll find me at. Right now, I've got a bunch of things coming up. I think the biggest one I have is I doing another edition of my series called The Flip Side. So what I do is I interview a member of student media from another from a team that Memphis is playing on the biggest sports games on the calendar, and we just do a preview article. And I'm got one in the works right now for Oklahoma softball. I need to set that set that up pretty soon. But look for that to drop. I love doing those. I've done it for men's basketball. I've done it for women's soccer. I've done it for women's basketball. I've done it for football. So that's one of my favorite projects right now. That's something I've got coming up that I'm really looking forward to. And in addition to that, I'll be your person for women's soccer in the fall. I'm your person for women's basketball now. I'm your person for softball now. I do a lot of women's sports. I do a lot of the teams that don't really get a lot of big picture attention, but that's fine because those you've got some phenomenal stories over there. And yeah, that's all I've got. Like I said, thank you, Wes. Thank you, John, for the opportunity to come on and speak with y'all. Really appreciate it.
Man, Nick New tonight on Tiger Stand, right here on the 4 Star Sports Media Network. Thanks everyone for listening. As always, go Tigers.